Hello, thank you for joining me today for a Hoya video. If you are new here, my name is Miro. If you are not new here, welcome back, and I need to apologize for the angle. It is an odd one. I will admit that I am hiding something from you. It is a room makeover. I don't think you can tell. Maybe you can tell a bit by this, but it is a room makeover which I am still going through the process of, and I'm recording a video on that. And you know, once that video is up, we can, well, continue with different odd angles. For now, we will just have to maybe be a bit like this, and maybe in several future videos you will see something that has been already pre-recorded, and maybe some of the future Hoya of the weeks will look like this, but eventually we will catch up and everything will look the same. Let's move on from that. I know why you are here. You are here to hear me talk about yet another Hoya. And today we have quite a lovely one, and it is Hoya griffithii. And I have three plants with me today. This is the one that I will show you the most. It is the most impressive one. This is Hoya griffithii from China. This is not so impressive. It only has 2 flowers on this one peduncle, but you have seen her in my previous video. There was a peduncle here, and I think it might be this one that has a bit of sap here because I removed those flowers. Most of them dropped and a couple of them didn't, so I just had to remove them because I was cleaning and I didn't want them to drop later. But we can see here that we actually have more buds coming in on this one, if my camera would grace us with the focus. So quite a beautiful clone of Hoya griffithii. So this is Hoya griffithii from China, with those lovely leaves. And then we have 2 other clones. You have also seen this one in bloom. This is Hoya griffithii IML 1856, currently out of bloom, with slightly less impressive foliage. We will take a look at that today. And then one that didn't bloom yet, and I am actually very anxiously waiting for this one to bloom. And it does have some buds here. And I think it's not the first time she has had buds. I think they blasted on me one time from a different peduncle. But this is Hoya griffithii with a yellow flower. And this one has an LT accession number, LT09026. And I am undecided which of these 2 has better leaves. They are quite different, and I like both of these for different reasons. This trellis is a bit shaky here, so let's try to help her not fall out. They need to be glued in, the trellises. I'm not zip tying them, but as you can see, I used the glue gun here, and I actually glued this one in place, which has been actually quite a genius thing. Now, Hoya griffithii has been published in Flora of British India, I know, Colonial Times, etc. in 1883, and it was described by Joseph Dalton Hooker. And this plant has been described on 2 syntypes, one of which has been found in what then they called Khassia Mountains, and I believe today that is just Khasi Hills in Meghalaya state in India, or Meghalaya region, but I do believe it is a state. And this plant was discovered on the altitude of 2,000 to 4,000 feet, which I believe is between 600 and 1,200 meters, if I'm not mistaken. I did write that in my notes. This plant was described as a stout climber, and it was described as having very thick peduncles, as thick as the stem. You can definitely see here that that peduncle is a thick boy. That's not a peduncle, that's the end of the stem. This is the peduncle, but you can just see they are quite thick, quite long as well. I do believe Hoya griffithii was named to honor William Griffith. Many plants have been named to honor him, and he was a British naturalist, doctor, and botanist, a contemporary of Nathaniel Wallach. And you know, I don't know if we talked about Hoya wallachii. I don't think we have talked about it in this series. Unfortunately, I don't think we will, because that has been devastated by mealybugs here. So we'll just have to wait, even though that is also another gorgeous plant, but not the topic of today's video. Now, this plant in nature grows from Assam, which is in northern India, to Hainan, which is in China, but it has also been found in Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand. So quite a wide range, I would say. And because of the altitude on which it was found, this plant could be considered a slightly cooler grower. So you don't necessarily need super high temperatures. We will talk about that later, but Hoya griffithii is just a very fast grower. Now this plant has been slower, but that's because of my mistreatment of it. It is about 3 years old from a cutting, and I think it has been cut several times. And I think today I finally have figured it out. I will admit that I have grown it inappropriately. In the beginning, I put it in too much light, and later I put it in even more light. Learn on nothing, right? And this plant has been up until recently in my southeast facing window, but it actually did not bloom there at all. All that happened there is it sort of got bleached. Now the color has returned to this more normal, darker green for this plant, but it got quite pale there. It is not sun stress, not for me, and it didn't bloom even with more light. Actually, it bloomed when it was moved to my northwest facing window to what is obviously slightly lower light. And you can just see on the size of the leaves. I don't know if we have any of the original leaves. I think maybe this is one of the original ones, which you see is quite big. But in my care, the leaves have been mostly smaller, not all of them, but that is usually a sign that you're keeping the plant in high light, or your Hoya in quite a high light. But they can get really, really nice. You can see here, these have grown in lower light again, and I will just risk a bit more light. So you can see here, they look much darker on camera, I will have to say that, than they actually are in real life. But nevertheless, gorgeous, gorgeous leaves. Typically on this clone with a lot of splash. It is also known as Hoya griffithii splash. Very beautiful plant, a very good grower, and I think you will be quite happy by having this in your collection. It also, on some of the leaves, especially in the newer ones, you will get these purplish backs, which don't know if that will get picked up by the camera all that well. But if you have something like Hoya buntokensis, that's sort of the deal with Hoya buntokensis too. It will have these purplish backs. And from that aspect, and from the aspect of the flower, it actually does resemble a bit Hoya buntokensis, at least in my opinion. And it's not the only Hoya that this resembles. Now, as you can see, these leaves on this clone, very nice, very splashy. They sort of have this characteristical ribbage, ribbage, I don't know. You can see if I move it in the light how that looks. So it's not veining, I mean it is, but it is obscured, I guess. It's not like Hoya callistophila. And there is a very strong central vein, which you will see on a different clone. But you can also see here that strong mid vein. On the IML clone, that is also visible, but these leaves, in my opinion, are slightly more boring. You know, it's nothing to write home about, quite plain, and it's still nice because the flowers are nice, but the leaves are just not very impressive. This was sent to me by my friend Farah, and I don't know how long I will keep this one. We'll see if it shows to be a very good bloomer. I will tell you one thing, it bloomed much sooner than the China clones, so maybe just for that purpose, it could be worth keeping around. But in my opinion, the best leaves are on, or maybe second best, I think the China clone and this one sort of share the first spot, is on this LT clone, which you can see, very long, narrow. That vein is really prominent in this one. They're just very, very beautiful. And I do apologize that they do not show up as well, but they're just very, very nice. I will say that the original leaves are slightly more interesting than the ones that grew for me, and that is all due to light. But I have been thinking about adjusting these a bit, their light levels. They are currently, these two are in my grow tent, and I do think I will take them out and sort of put them all together in my northwest facing window, which is where this one is. What I will do with the plants from there, because that's actually back there behind this very giant locky, which I just recently trellised, because I mean that's like a meter of locky there. Don't know where we will put that, but I think these griffithis can go back there in that window, and that is enough of that light so we can get nice foliage and some flowers. But when we compare the three clones, I would say that this one is the easiest to bloom, and I don't think that's by accident. I have read from several people, Doug Chamberlain included, that this one from China just takes a little bit longer to get to bloom. This one is 3 years old, as I told you. This one is, I don't know if it's even 1 year old. I think we are, yeah, it's 1 year old actually. I got it in June of 2023, and now it is July of 2024. Same with this one from June of 2023. And they could have grown better. Even those I have mistreated a bit. This is definitely a plant that is best grown on a trellis. You can grow it on a tower trellis or on one of those arches that I showed you with bamboo. I don't think this is gonna look so nice as a hanging plant, as even the publication says. It is a very vigorous climber. It really wants to climb on something. It can be at times a little bit difficult to trellis this plant. The vines are just very stiff, very stubborn, and it also doesn't really love when you touch it way too much. You can definitely trellis it, but she's not going to be super thrilled. As we can see, this trellising is a bit messy, and I do think we need to extend this trellis. I've been sort of avoiding that, but some of the vines, like this one here, I actually just, let me just undo them. I just actually did that so I can take a flower photo, but they were actually growing differently. You can see they sort of reached the end of that trellis. So I think we can go a little bit up with this one. So in a future video, watch me extend the trellis on this Hoya. If you are going to put this on a tower trellis, I do recommend going with as wide as possible. This is a 15 centimeter pot, and it's a good size for this Hoya. It's not going to be a small Hoya, and you're going to have a difficult time putting it on a narrower trellis. It just doesn't really want to bend. You can see with this, like if I try to bend this too much, I will break it. So choose a wider trellis if you can, or as I said, with these, go with something like that. I found this to be pretty good. You can even see here how big that hoop is that I made. So it sort of went to the top of the trellis, and then, you know, there is this big hoop. And I think I will move it a bit lower when it grows a little bit so it can root in the mix. Quite a lovely, fast growing Hoya that will give you very nice big Hoya leaves if you're into that. And of course, aside from that, it has lovely flowers. This, if not for the leaves, is absolutely worth growing for the flower. And I said in my previous video where I showed you this plant that they are sort of, to me, reminiscent of Hoya undulata. But again, as I said, Hoya buntokensis, undulata, very similar. They are quite big. It's not as impressive as when you have only two. And the back of the flower is spotty. But I will show you some photos where you will get a better look at those flowers. And one of the great characteristics of this Hoya is that the flowers last a very long time. On this clone, they lasted over 2 weeks. And this one, the IML clone, bloomed a couple of days later, and it was out of bloom at least half a week before this one. So maybe on this one they last about a week, but on this one they definitely last quite a long time. Now, The temperatures were the same. They were both watered. So I just think this one has a bit more of an edge when it comes to that. The flower is heavily perfumed. I am still not sure if I like it. You can even smell it during the day. It does remind a bit of Hoya lacunosa. It has that lacunosa-y undertones. It does have, the smell is, it's nice, but again, it can be a little bit overpowering. I really didn't love it on some nights I did. It's very difficult for me to describe it. I wouldn't call it refreshing, nothing like citrusy smell of Hoya finlaysoni. So do be mindful of that. I actually didn't smell this one, the IML cologne, as much as the China cologne, which again, I tell you, is sold as Hoya Griffithii Splash. This one is definitely more fragrant. It's not that I hate the smell, but on some days it was a bit too much, and you know, maybe you will love it. I don't know. I sometimes like the stronger smells, I sometimes don't. For example, in Hoya Mitrata, I have that in my tent, and when that is in bloom, it can be a bit overpowering. But nevertheless, despite that, I will keep her outside of my tent, so it's not that bad, right? It's not something that I need to shut off in a closet and never smell it. But also another thing about Hoya flowers and the scents of the flowers, for some people, one Hoya can be very pleasant, for other people, it is not. So if I say that something is very pleasant for me, it may not be so pleasant for you, and vice versa. If I tell you something smells like chocolate, you may not agree. Some people don't agree that Hoya Loki smells like chocolate. I think it does. I also like the scent of the flower on Hoya carnosa. I think it's lovely. A lot of people cannot stand Hoya carnosa. They think she has too strong of a scent. So that's a brief public service announcement about the Hoya scents. I just think you have to get it to flower, see for yourself or smell for yourself if you like it or not. But in any case, I do like the flowers a lot, and I'm so happy to see that there's so many more buds coming. And I think that it takes a longer time for this to bloom, but once it starts to bloom, once it blooms for the first time, it is much easier to rebloom her again. And I would say that generally this plant does not have any pest issues. It's not difficult to grow. It's not annoying. You will need a slightly larger pot and a bigger trellis, but that's about it. I haven't had that many issues with the pests. She's been quite resilient to mites and other things, to underwatering. I don't know about overwatering. Don't do that. But in general, very resilient Hoya. I don't know what to tell you about that. Those are the roots on this one. This plant is in pon, and I think she might have to remain in pon simply because I don't have A, time to repot it, B, if I see that they're doing well in pon, which if you have been around here for a time, you know that I'm transferring them from pon. But if I see that she's doing okay, I will most likely leave it. The rest of these are in cocoa husk, nothing else, just cocoa husk, and they're doing well. No roots coming out yet. They have been recently repotted. I started both of these in cocoa coir and perlite, and I think you actually saw me repot this in a video, so you will see that they have grown quite nicely. I grew all of them at one point in my grow tent under artificial lights, and it was fine, but if you do it, make sure that it's not too close to the light or that the light is weaker. So you will know what that means. I will most likely have to add a bit of an LED light for winter in my window, because in my northwest facing windows there's light maybe until 2 or 3 p.m. in winter, 3 p.m. at most, and like from maybe 8 or 9 a.m. So that's not going to be enough. They will live, but I want thrivage so I can complain about how big everyone is getting. But in any case, beautiful, beautiful Hoya to have, very, very suitable for beginners. I would just make sure to select a clone that I really like. There is also a silver one. I don't have it. I think it's quite expensive for what it is. Which again, I always say something is too expensive. Don't think that I would spend that much. Even this is enough for me just to have this splashy leaf. And before I leave you, just a quick note on the temperatures and fertilizing. So for the temperatures, I said this can be considered a slightly cooler growing Hoya. A lot of them do like to be grown warmer. So you can go as low as 15 degrees with this one, which is about 60 of Fahrenheit, and there should be no issues with this. This one has been all winter in my windows in my hallway, which are quite cool, and it had no issue. And they have like tiles on the windowsill, so she was up against the tiles, no issue. Some of my other Hoyas, like my Hoya Denisi, my Hoya Kari, Paradisa, didn't love that as much, but this one had no issue with that situation. So you can grow her like that. You don't have to worry too much about temperatures. Of course, I would try not to expose them to super high, intense temperatures like 110 of Fahrenheit or 40 something degrees of Celsius. We don't need to do that, but just keep her in normal room conditions. I haven't noticed that she needs higher humidity or anything else to thrive and to bloom. So a really super easygoing Hoya, maybe even a better grower than Hoya carnosa. So very, very suitable for everyone who is starting to grow Hoyas, but also very rewarding for all of us who grow them and who want to see sometimes something different in bloom than the most commonly grown Finlaysonis and everything that's affinity Finlaysoni, Clemencerum, Callistophila, Acha, blah, 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 all of that, and the ever popular Lacunosa. It's nice to see something that has larger flowers, because Hoya undulata can be a long wait and not so frequent. That one also needs very hot temps. And Buntukensis for me hasn't bloomed yet, even though I think it will be quite similar. That one, I don't know what she's waiting for, but probably for better care, which now she's getting. But she was neglected. And one more thing about the fertilizing, I fertilize them about once a week, every time I water, which we know is not once a week, but let's pretend. And you should really water them once a week, especially in a good, well-draining potting mix. I did add some slow release to this one, and it's doing really well. No complaints so far. So just very chill Hoyas. I don't think you need to worry about anything with these. That is it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have Hoya griffithii and what has been your experience with this plant. Once again, very lovely, rewarding, gorgeous plant. I'm so happy that I can finally highlight her in Hoya of the Week. At one point, I didn't think that she was ever going to bloom because it was the China clone, and 3 years is a long wait. Not for something like a carnosa, but it's a long wait in my opinion. But even this one can be bloomed sooner. I know a friend who did bloom her much, much sooner, within a year. So it could really be just me not finding the right conditions right away. But that's why you have me. So you can learn about all my mess-ups so you don't have to repeat them. But in any case, surely some of the clones can be bloomed in a year. And when you see the flowers, you will definitely see why this Hoya is a worthy addition to your collection. If this video didn't convince you, well, try it out. It's quite affordable, widely available, and you should give it a go. Listen to me. You know that I always have the best advice. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you on Sunday in what potentially may be a Hoya haul. Oops. Bye! I would like to take some time to thank all of my patrons for their incredible support. A massive shout out to my $5 patrons. My 2 anonymous patrons, Alex von Siebenthal, Amber Clear, and Margaret Moon, Angela Bernard, Angela Parrish, and C. Aspen Drake, Betsy, Brett Noble, Karen, Candy Taft, Catherine Molina, Christy Claire Cola, Daniela Danube Daniels, Daria Kaminska, Deborah Violet, Deli Heredia, Diane Sikorsky, Dipanjali Rao, Either W, Erin Keenan, Eleni Saxon, Ellen M. Mortal, Farah, Gathering Moss, Gina Geisig, Go Green Tropical, Gross It's Kyle, Heather Uppingham, Hoji Scott, Hoya Heather, Yana Griffin, Jessica Chia, Jonas Barrehjord Flarson, Jovan Denoth, Kara, Catherine P, Casey Gross, Callie Gallagher, Kelso, Kimberly Polka, Kiwi Mochi, Christy Ehrlich, Lisa Mary, MPLS, Lori J. Revert, Mandy Milliken, Marcel Har, Maria Stein, Marina Yarmolich, Mars B, Marty Miller, Mary Rose, Melissa Walker, Michael Curley, Michelle Heron, Nicole Ferranti, Mirka Grun Roos, Moa Edmond, Nelly Yang, Niha Basu, Nicole Maroney, Nanguin, Nita Macy,
Odette Brooke,
BJ Plant Druid, Rachel Peterson, Sandra Cornelius, Sherry Kumar, Sophia Rian, Stephanie H2O, Tessa Martins, Tia B, TJWO, Trista Bailey, Tristan Thomas, Wendy Rossman, Zenia Green, Youth of the Walmut, Zaira Rivera, Zordarama, and Zlakov Niponi. A big thank you to my $3 patrons: Angelina Farnan, Kilone Constance, Daryl De Rosario, Eden C, Catherine Parsons, Kent Brown, Elle Lindberg, Lindsay Ann, Mary H, Monica Wykers, Nella, Syke Zera, Renee Church, Ringlov Tang, Watana Cool, and Wendy Foreman. And a thank you to my $1 patrons: one anonymous patron, Alice Borrelin, Brandon Pacheco, Christina Greengrass, Colleen Coyle, Levi, Couture Helvetica, Emilia Bronson, Jamie Arsenault, Jolie Sullivan, Kayla Vavra, Kelly Ash, Chris Perez,
Lauren M, Lorianne Subramaniam, Luzman Fernandez,
Neely Spicer, Nerdy Kathy, Olivia Chinmuller, Sarah, and Tracy the Eyebriller.